I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we dive into a wonderful book called An Agriculturist's Well-Lived Life, influenced by the transcendental power of flowers. It's written by Dale Heinzman, and it is a heartfelt memoir that captures his experience and his extraordinary journey in agriculture, from Cornell University to international seed companies to specialty flower farming. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Dale, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Good to see you too, Logan. It's a pleasure to meet you.
It's a pleasure meeting you. We're glad you wrote this book. Was wondering why you finally got around to writing your own story. I think it's an important one to tell for sure.
Well, basically, when I got to be way up in my 70s, I think it's quite normal for people to begin to wonder what was the meaning of their life, what was the purpose, what did they accomplish. And in fact, when you go back in recorded history, all philosophers face the same issue of trying to figure out what the meaning of their life was, and how it impacted people and so on. And so basically, that's why I started writing it. And then as I got writing and going, all of the various aspects of my life and my career to get to where I am now, it became clear to me as I went along that, yes, this would be something interesting for my family, but would also be something that would be inspiring for many other people, because everybody faces these kinds of issues. And I was going to tell you that one of the things through here is I would not be here if my great grandfather had been killed in the Civil War. And he was several times, in fact, one time, of course, troops that were by him died. And one time, a bullet came so close that it cut the strap on his canteen. But anyway, he survived. And then that made me think, one of my friends who has read the book told me that he had a situation with his ancestor where his ancestor was coming over on the Mayflower, and he fell off the ship somehow out in the Atlantic Ocean, but there were ropes going behind the ship. He managed to grab one and get back on the ship. So obviously in that instance, if he hadn't, then he wouldn't be here. So as I say, that's really why I think something like this, a book like this, would be something that's going to inspire a lot of people, because they can relate to it through their own ancestry.
Absolutely. Life is tenuous, no doubt, and it can change on a dime. And certainly when people reach a certain age, they start saying to themselves, what's it all about, Alfie? And you try to piece together what your life is all about. I love your title, An Agriculturist's Well-Lived Life. Why did you choose that as your title?
Well, I chose that because, as we'll discuss later, flowers had an important impact on my life from the time I was 5 or 6 years old right up through now. And but I didn't want to put flowers in the title because there's too many books that say that. So that's why I put the subtitle in that I did. Because again, really, when I look at it, beginning from when I was 5 or 6 and continuing right through to the end of my life, flowers did have a major impact on my life. But my father took me, starting when I was 5 or 6, he took me to the farm where he grew up, and we went to see the wildflowers in the woods. And then we went to see the wild daffodils, which there was, they'd stretch out hundreds and hundreds of feet in a field on the farm. So then, as they say, really, my interest in flowers started very early. Then when I was 11 years old, my father rented land to a major peony cut flower grower who had, well, he had some in Pennsylvania, some in North Carolina, some in New York State. And he marketed his peony cut flowers all over the eastern United States. And of course, then I got really interested in peonies, and it grew from that. So that's really kind of how that came about.
The subtitle is influenced by the transcendental power of flowers. We hear
Right,
about transcendental meditation,
right.
but for you, it's flowers, right?
Well, I think really, if you think about the world and science and everything, yes, we supposedly understand so much about the universe and so forth, but it's also pretty obvious that we really have no idea, how the universe came about or what it really means. And we can go into black holes and all this routine, and it's really beyond human comprehension. So, I mean, I have to, I feel that some or other God is involved here, and I think there are mystical powers, and I really think that we can be impacted by some of these mystical powers from our ancestors and so on are really having an impact on our life. At least I think that certainly is a likely possibility.
Absolutely, absolutely. Their beauty alone has an impact on our lives, I think, no doubt. I moved to a farm after COVID when we could, work remotely. And it really is a game changer. Living around here, the great people around here, the beautiful environment, it really is bucolic, as we like to say. You grew up on a farm and you actually have lived your entire life in your family's house. Tell us how
Right.
that has impacted your life.
Well, it's obvious that what it's done is it has given me kind of a peace and stability that I didn't keep moving all the time and everything. And also, we live in an extremely a beautiful part of the country. The Finger Lakes is getting to be world renowned. In fact, even now, as far as wines go, it's called the Napa Valley of the East. So we have all that going on. But it is a beautiful place to live, and I was really extremely fortunate to be able to live here, and I was very lucky to be able to have a diverse career without having to move. So I think from that point of view, that's the major impact it had on my life. Of course, obviously there were negatives, but that was a major positive impact.
What were some of those negatives and how did you overcome them?
Well, this goes back to what the world was going through. When my father was the first in his family to ever own farmland, and his objective was to own a farm. And unfortunately, he was contending with this during the Great Depression and World War II. So I can't even begin to imagine the kind of pressures that people were facing from those issues in World War II. They had to work extremely hard. My mother was working constantly. She even had to feed and board hired men. And I mean, and they were struggling to avoid bankruptcy and they wanted to get to own the farm. And one of the interesting things about this situation was my father was in a partnership with a local businessman who he had kraut factories. And they were in partnership for, I believe, 10 years. And then my father finally said, look, I cannot do this any longer because I want to own farmland. So my father found another farm closer to where he grew up near Waterloo, New York, and they moved there. But this gentleman, Leland Colton, said, well, would you work with me one more year while I'm trying to find somebody to replace you? And so what happened was he said, yes, he would do that. So now they had all the stress of running two farms. He was also helping his brother and his father get established on a farm. And he was really the best businessman and was doing most of the business transactions here. And then what happened was actually Leland Colton I think he got pneumonia or whatever. He was in the hospital and then he got a blockage of the bowel and he died. So now what was going on is what was going to happen to this farm. And it turned out that when they went to settle his estate, the businesses were not doing well at all. There was a $10,000 trust fund that had to be paid for his sister. That was the first bequest in his will. They could not raise $10,000, so now they had to start selling assets. So they decided to sell the farm, and there were several people in Geneva that would have bought it, but only if my father would go into partnership with them to farm it, and he wouldn't do that. So finally, they sold it to him. So that really is how he even came to own this farm. And I mean, it caused horrible stress on the family. There was my father was always he tended to have a nervous upsets and so forth periodically. And then there was other involvement too, the things he shouldn't have been doing. It's a wonder their marriage held together, but it did. And somehow or other, it all worked out. But as I say, because of the fact this was going on, it did have a negative impact on my siblings who were all older than me, because I was the youngest by 9 years. And that created family problems that really never went away. So, there's, as I say, there's pros and cons to these situations, but I'm sure most people have pros and cons in their life. It's never all smooth and perfect. That just isn't life.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like this. It's not like
Oh
this.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's the way it is.
Yeah. Exactly. You included a lot of information in your book about your parents and your siblings. I guess to make the book relatable, that we could see that we all had these commonalities, we had all issues, whether it's one thing or another.
Right. I think that I think I really struggled trying to decide how much I should put in, because I loved my father. Of course, my mother I was especially close to. She doted on me. I'm really the only sibling she had any time to bring up,
Yeah.
because my other three siblings, she was working so much she really couldn't spend much time with them. But I really thought that it was important for people to see that. And it's not that I didn't love my father, and I know they were going through terribly hard times, but I thought people needed to realize what it was that was impacting this and what caused the family issues that, frankly, never really entirely went away. But this is just, that's again, that's life.
Hmm.
I
Exactly.
think if you talk to most families, you'd find out there's issues that family members just don't get along well.
Oh, absolutely. Every family, if you pull behind the curtain a little bit, you'll see similar, dysfunction or whatever word you want to use. What do you think is the most important event in building a successful life?
In
For
my
you, what
ability.
was it?
Well, there's undoubtedly the most important event was when I met my wife. And the only reason that I met her, again, is explained in the book, is a whole series of circumstances that led to the possibility of friends I'd met, people that had done work for the remodeling of the house and so on, became good friends, and then they introduced me to my wife, and we hit it off immediately. We were engaged in a matter of weeks, and we've
Hmm.
been together now for a little over 46 years. So
Wonderful.
that's pretty amazing when you think about it. But again, I think that, frankly, I think that who you wind up marrying has got to have it could well be the most important thing that impacts your life. I mean, I think a lot of people would probably agree with that. And I was very lucky
Absolutely.
because I met a woman who was wonderful and supportive and a hard worker, and as I said, we've had a wonderful marriage.
Yeah. And you sound like a lucky man to have such a good
Yeah, well,
woman
I think
behind
I
you
am
and
a
at your
lucky man.
side.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, everybody has got negatives. I can be someone who focuses too much on everything that's wrong, but you have to come back. That's just my personality. But you have to come back and realize that you've got to look at the positives and be thankful for what you've got, because everybody has issues. There is no life that's perfect. That's not the nature of life.
Absolutely. We're almost out of time, so let me just ask you this. What do you hope readers take away from your book?
Well, that's really a really difficult question to answer, but I think I what I hope that they take away is they will realize that their life has had an impact, because they will figure out, they'll see everything that I went through, they'll relate it to what they went through, and then they will appreciate more what they accomplished in life, and they will realize that they actually did. Uh, Most good people, of course, do accomplish things in life, and the families and so far and so forth. So I think that's really a pretty good way to approach it.
Absolutely. I think people will find common ground in your life story. They'll see themselves in your life story, whether you're a banker, whether you're a farmer, whether you're a doctor, there's all a process to it, and we're
And
all influenced.
that's why I gave myself that fictitious diagnosis of terminal cancer, because I wanted to have the impetus to make people keep reading the book. And a lot of people told me that they really couldn't put the book down. And it's a long book, but it's not even half the words of one of my favorite historical novels. And I think that people will relate to the book. And one thing I would like, if there's time, I would like to tell you is I think one of the things that makes me the happiest about my book is that my mother, who was the valedictorian of her class in high school, and I didn't realize that I had a copy of her valedictory, but I put that in the book. And now, 47 years after she died, she's a published author, and that makes me happy.
Absolutely. It's a great legacy to leave behind. Her words from when she was just a young woman filled with hope and promise. And to share those words with the world, I think, is a wonderful thing to do. The name of the book we've been talking about today is called An Agriculturist's Well-Lived Life, influenced by the transcendental power of flowers. Dale, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.